You are about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating talk radio. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOC-DALI. So nobody seems to want the data centers. And you keep seeing these headlines where cities and states are rejecting data centers. They're voting. People are like, oh, not in my neck of the woods. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the risks associated with having a data center, an AI data center near you. So what are these AI data centers? They're a little different than the cloud storage, but these AI data centers require a lot of land, a lot of resources in order to compute, in order to store, in order to execute AI. And these facilities require a lot. And so in order to handle the workloads, which we haven't even begun to see the demand, the AI data centers require cooling, require massive electrical grid access. And so you have, multiple cities and states and people that are near these going, no, our electrical grid is already taxed. We got all these electrical cars, EVs, and we need air conditioning, and the summers are hotter and we're older and we don't seem to tolerate. So like for me, I never needed the air conditioning in the 60s. I always needed the air conditioning in the 70s. But now that I'm, a little older, I'm not handling the heat well. So I'm demanding more on my electrical grid. We've gotten people to eat more at home and to use, so they're doing more at home. After COVID, our home use of our electricity is way different than what it used to be, where everybody would just always go out and do other things. And people are working now from home. And so AI is adding to that. So when you look at some of the controversies going on, the U.S. has about 4,200 data centers. There's about 600 in Virginia alone. Maryland, I think, has been fighting it. Maryland's Office of People Counsel has filed a complaint with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission due to the costs and how Maryland customers have to pay for these projects driven by data center demand. The grid reliability is causing a lot of concerns, like in places like Texas, Georgia, New Jersey has been protesting data centers. Apparently, there's supposed to be a 1.8 billion, 400,000 square foot facility being built, and the community is not liking it. Water is a concern in Georgia. This is according to let me give credit where credit is due. Newsweek, where Georgia is concerned about the water usage of the, apparently, according to Politico, Quality Technology Services, who ultimately owed nearly $150,000 for more than 29 million gallons of unaccounted for water use. And so there's this dispute over, what's going on with our water? Where's our water? Who's paying for that? So what about the health risks? What are health risks? Well, you do get pollution. You got these PM 2.5s. You have particulate matter. Apparently, these data centers do produce a lot of pollution, not only noise pollution, but air pollution. There's also nitric oxide gas release because you need cooling systems and you need these diesel backup generators. So your fine particulate matter, your nitrogen oxides, other chemicals can be emitted, and that could affect people who have nearby people who may have asthma, respiratory issues, or cardiovascular risks. There was a Harvard study, which if I have time, I'll read you a little bit from, is concerned that it's going to add to the number of deaths locally, that there's going to be a premature rise in premature death to the hundreds of thousands. The HVAC units and generators, apparently they can exceed 85 decibels. So people are kind of worried about the noise, not to mention it affecting sleep disruption, the lights. These data centers are operating at night, so there's lights, and that could affect because they're using, obviously a lot of light to be able to power and security, things like that. And then, of course, the water and resource stress. Looking at this Harvard study, talking about the pollution and the risks, if I could find it very quickly here, they were worried about the fine particulate matter. And I'm trying to see what they have. So they say they estimated between 53 million and 99 million in annual health damages from associated air pollution. And I believe that is in Virginia alone. They say one of the reasons it's such a staggering number is because it's built in such a populated area in Northern Virginia near D.C. area. The damages we estimate, according to Harvard researchers, are driven primarily by an estimated 3.4 to 6.5 additional premature deaths per year across an impacted region, with increased hospital admissions, asthma-related outcomes, and lost productivity. They also looked at Mississippi. They looked at Memphis, Tennessee. They looked at, other areas. Now, these are all projections. Okay, we do not have anybody dying from an AI center that we know of. But the AI boom, and this is what happens in America, and it seems to happen where we have a demand, and then we have laws, and everybody gets excited about something without the infrastructure being in place. We could mitigate the water loss. We could mitigate the power grid use if we spend a little time to look at other ways to cool, other ways to, like hydrogen, sources of fuel or sources of power, as opposed to diesel. And so there's, if we take some time and plan this out and do this right, it's much easier to build it in the beginning than to retrofit. But AI, now everybody and their mother wants to use AI. They could save money on staff and labor. They can now compete, and everybody, and I'm trying to write a simple email and the AI pops up. I don't want the AI. Let me, I want people to know that the email came from me, from my heart. But now I don't know what anybody's telling me. In fact, you could even use AI to text your mother, which I might consider. And so the AI use, the more we use it, the more demand, and they can't build enough of these data centers. So are there health risks? Yes. Do people have a right to protest? Yes. But some of these things are mitigatable and fixable. We just don't have the time. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away. Hi, everyone. Dr. Dahlia here. Thousands of physicians, residents, nurses, and medical students are silently dealing with depression. And tragically, 400 take their lives each year. 400! I wrote The Depressed Doctor, hoping to reach out to anyone struggling. You're not alone. Don't stay silent. The Depressed Doctor can be found on Amazon, or the book can be found on drdahlia.com. And if you or anyone you know needs help, call or text 988, the National Suicide and Crisis Hotline.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme, the solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
We're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So Graham Plattner has left the building. Hallelujah, praise the Lord. I'm blown away at how he was even able to rise to the fame that he did. Guy's a piece of work. But there's some concerns that I'm seeing. One that we've spoken about for a very, very long time is how people have made him a poster child for those with PTSD. No. He does not represent those with post-traumatic stress disorder. Please do not let him be the go-to or the spokesperson for PTSD. Because in that, you are implying that you could be Nazi, you could be anti-military, anti-women. I please don't do that. Somebody with PTSD, and you have a whole spectrum. For the most part, understands right from wrong as it pertains to Nazism, as it pertains to rape and assault, as it pertains to somebody being in the military and fighting for their lives and then deciding to make fun of them. I'm really, really concerned that people were saying, but he has PTSD, so we got to give him a mulligan. And people with PTSD may do that. No, that's not representative of those with PTSD. And so I'm of the many reasons why I'm glad he's not running for the Democratic Maine Senate seat, that was a big one, because to try to now re-educate everybody on the trials and tribulations of those who struggle with PTSD and how they are, extremely capable to be able to hold jobs, hold political positions, etc. You have somebody like this that's ruining it and completely marring their reputation and causing stereotypes that shouldn't exist. So, good. For those of you that saw his 11-minute goodbye video, he blamed everybody else and he made himself look like the victim. And what he tried to capitalize on was that you had this big, let me see, his exact words were let me see if I can find what he called the media, like the big media establishment. The corporate media system and political establishment acted as judge, jury, and executioner. Well, when you listen to this, you do, and I'm not saying I agree with him, but it does strike a couple chords where the media or the powers that be decide who get to run. I mean, we saw what happened with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was the president. Should have never, been in that position, because we all saw in the 2020 campaign him struggling. But the establishment or whoever the powers that be were able to prop him up, keep him in office, but then take him down. Who are these powers that be? And so Graham Plattner kind of capitalized on that. The idea of judge, jury, and executioner. He was bringing up how you had sexual allegations where one of his girlfriends, he came over to his house, allegedly drunk, forced her to have sex. There's been multiple women coming out with allegations. So he brings up that the media was judge, jury, and executioner. He didn't even have time to defend himself. He didn't even have time to investigate. He had to. Here's the thing with that. Okay. That's your issues, Mr. Plattner, in terms of being a candidate to represent the amazing state of Maine, was already marred by your Nazi tattoo, by your comments on Reddit about women's responsibility in rape, in terms of your ridiculing, Purple Heart veterans. That was already there. My issue is he shouldn't have ever won the primary to begin with. But they had him in a primary, it was just him. So whether the people really wanted him or not, he's saying I was voted for. That's who the Democrats gave Democrats to vote for. If I was a Democrat in Maine, I'd be pretty pissed off. And so even though he has a point, if somebody is accusing you of assault, do you already get executed? Aren't you innocent until proven guilty? He's not wrong about that. But the reason why they had him removed is because there were all these other things. And the Democrats struggled to say, well, he covered up the Nazi tattoo. He claimed it wasn't a Nazi tattoo. We can't technically, as if Nazism is okay and not enough of a reason, such that now when there were allegations, they felt like, okay, here's our out. Just like with Biden, they used the debate. Well, his debate performance is now our exit ramp. There were so many other reasons, but they had to find they had to find a focal event or something that they could say. And so even though there were all these sexual allegations, there was the New York Times expose, nothing happened to Graham Plattner. Until finally, they were like, well, what do we do? What do we do? How do we do it? Do we believe this woman, but she's conservative? Do we whatever? So it took a Democrat woman saying, yeah, he did this to me, allegedly, to finally have them, have him leave. So even though he was really trying to look like the victim here, you had so much other things besides the accusations that I don't think made you a worthy candidate. The oyster farmer, from what we understand, he's not really a true oyster farmer. I think he did it once, or he did something for his mom. I didn't really research him much because I didn't really care. I'm not in Maine and I'm not voting in that election. But if there's any integrity or any exaggeration or plumping of your resume that's not warranted, that's I think that's also grounds for you don't just tell us what you've done, and if you haven't done anything, then let us know that too. But there's this big push for grassroots campaigns and people who are non-political establishments, which I have to admit I actually like. I don't like these long-term politicians where they've been there for decades, just like Biden. Biden, they felt, deserved the presidency because he had, prior to running, a 37-year career in the Senate or a career in politics. Well, that's really, really nice, but does that mean they're going to be the best commander-in-chief? And so there's this big push, which is why Trump won and why a lot of these other candidates with the Democratic Socialists are winning, because they're not typical politicians. They're moms, they're dads, they're small business owners. They're like, you know what? I'm going to change things. And so it's very, very attractive. However, those are the pros. The con to it is they haven't been vetted. To be a politician that has been like Biden, you didn't see any skeletons in the closet come out in the 2020 campaign because he has already been vetted and graded and squeezed and assembly lined for decades. And so whether he had an alleged extramarital affair or whatever, that by the time he ran for president, that was already diluted and neutralized, and so it wasn't, nobody was going to bring that up. So when you look at who vetted, I mean, who is at fault for Graham Plattner's rise and fall? Is it the accusers? Is it him for what he did? Is it the Democrats for allowing him to get as far as he did? I mean, the Democrats made him a star. Everybody knows about him. They built him up. Bernie Sanders, Chuck Schumer, Elizabeth Warren, everybody boosted him and made him look like a hero of the Democratic Party. And are they at fault? Who's really at fault for this rise and fall? And so one take home from this is be worthy. Okay, I know a lot of us want to, run for president. A lot of us want to run for office. I don't. I don't have really any skeletons in the closet because luckily I didn't have time to do too much. Would have loved to have one mugshot though. I just feel like, everybody needs to have like a mugshot, just to, for some reason, no, they don't need to, but for me, I just don't want that. I don't, but for those people like, I want to make a change. Understand that everybody's going to look at you with a microscope. Maybe your party you're running for might not. But when things come out, the truth will always come out. And if you want to represent America, America gets the final say as to if they want you or not. I mean, if Graham Plattner wants to run for office later, people will allow him to. He will have an opportunity. He might not have Democratic money or Republican money, but if he wants to be out there and be in the public eye, he can. America's a free country. Whether people want to look at him or listen to him is another thing. But I'm sure those with post-traumatic stress disorder are like, thank you for not representing us, because that was an absolute debacle. And we have for decades tried to shatter the ridiculous stereotypes that have surrounded those with PTSD and teach people that many individuals could have PTSD, whether they were on a tour of duty, whether they were raped, whether they had a gun, they were robbed at gunpoint, and so you might have certain behaviors and difficulties, but you want to be doing the behavior that Graham Patner allegedly did. 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
Back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, President Donald J. Trump has now an airport that's named after him. So he joins JFK, John F. Kennedy Airport, Ronald Reagan Airport, and many others. And now he has the code DJT. The airport is the Palm Beach Airport in Florida. Apparently uses that airport a lot to fly into his home at Mar-a-Lago, and it's being celebrated by many, and then it's being criticized by many, of course. It's interesting. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and so we've had McCarran Airport for years, and I didn't know much about Senator McCarran. McCarran was a senator, but he had a past that was allegedly marred with racism, and there were many people advocating for the airport to change his name. It was before my time. I didn't know much about it, but all of a sudden we had Harry Reid International Airport. Harry Reid was the Democratic Senate majority leader for many years. And Harry Reid comes from Nevada. This is Nevadan. I met him multiple times. Nice guy. May he rest in peace. But that became very, very controversial because in Las Vegas, they were like, well, wait a second. You name it Harry Reid, you're kind of, you're solidifying a political image. We didn't get a choice. Why can't we call it Las Vegas Airport? They couldn't call it Las Vegas Airport because it also serves Henderson and Pahrump and Clark County and Southern Nevada Airport. So you would think, Las Vegas, but a big concern people had is nobody asked us. We didn't get to be asked. Well, there is no process stated where you have to have the voters say. A governor, state legislators have to approve it. The FAA has to approve it. But for the airport to be changed to somebody, a name, it doesn't really go to the voters. And maybe it's because they think the voters will say Mickey Mouse, or, they'll say, I don't know, they'll just come up with, whomever. But the Dr. Dahlia Airport, I'd be really worried about that. A lot of junk food, and trash probably everywhere, and not enough mirrors. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm not a big surprise that Trump is going to want an airport named after him. And apparently this was signed into law by Governor DeSantis in Florida, who I believe in March approved it. That if I could, let me see, make sure, it's according to CBS News, that, yeah, DeSantis signed the law into March to officially change the airport name. The FAA issued guidance that the name will change officially on July 9th. Now, the airport code is still PBI for Palm Beach International. The official code might not be seen, and the whole, shall we say, conversion might not happen until August 18th. So for those of you flying into Palm Beach and you're used to doing PBI, you can still do PBI, and then it'll switch to DJT, and DJT for Donald J. Trump. So they say for the next 40 days, the FAA locational identifier and the International Civil Aviation Organization is going to be using different airport codes for pilots, air traffic controllers, aviation operations. And then, and I remember with Vegas, there was this transition. Still, I still see things where it says McCarran. And so they had to change the signage. They had to change. I mean, there was a process to change the airport name. But it's interesting. With Donald J. Trump, I like to look at the psychology of our commander in chiefs, and it's interesting because Biden, he went through, I think he wanted to be in power, but I don't think he was the one in power. Donald J. Trump, he's in charge. I mean, there's no question he's in charge. And the one thing that I think is very blatantly apparent is I don't believe, expected that after his 45th, being, President 45, that there would be so much reversal, even in the history telling of what he did, that he, in this comeback 47 presidency, wants to make things permanent. Anybody could change an airport name. I mean, it could be changed again in the future. But he doesn't want to be forgotten. And I was even kind of, I'm looking up at what Biden did, and, because as I'm, reporting on things, and I'm seeing history change. I mean, the recession, the Great Recession that happened, and it was a bad one that went on for years. And a lot of people in Vegas were getting fired well into 2012, 13, 14, etc. In fact, Black Friday got changed. In fact, they started to, in the early teens, open up Black Friday on Thanksgiving Day, to help companies make more money during so you had all these different media, because I wrote articles on this. So you had all these different media, documentation of the recession and the economic fallout that happened beyond 09, 10, 11, 12. Yet now when you read it, it says, the recession was completely over in 2009. But that's not how we remember it, because there was, collapse of the market. There was a lot going on. Yes, it precipitated in 08. But the fallout happened for a long time. But history changes. And so Donald J. Trump has seen that things can be rewritten very easily. They get the SEO, the search engine optimization, and something could supersede something previous written, or so he wants things that are permanent, that won't go away so easily. That's why he's doing the Trump accounts. Okay, you're not going to want to have millions of Americans whose child has a Trump account that's making money, and they're going to be able to cash out when they're 18, or be able to hold on to it and use it, in the future for retirement. You're not going to have a lot of people want to reverse that, because their money's into it. Getting the name on an airport, getting he wants the Middle East. He really wants to be the president known to ensure that there was peace in the Middle East. The Abraham Accords was huge. He's not getting the credit due for the Abraham Accords, but the Abraham Accords is only a small piece, because you still have Iran that's doing their damage and funding terrorism and all that, and trying to go after him and his daughter and killing their own civilians. And so he wants to have that credit. And it's very hard to not give him credit when, of course, people could say, well, he's messing up the system. He's messing up gas prices. And, people can be very critical about how it's being done. But this is what's driving him. And so I'm not surprised, an airport named after him, especially when he's there and his family's there. Not surprised. And we knew this was coming. And you know what? Listen, if we're now naming presidents or naming airports after, Senate majority leaders, then You got Dulles Airport, Newark. Newark might get a new name. You got Denver International Airport. I'm sure Denver International Airport might later change their name. And so, yeah, I think there's going to be this trend to, whoever, but the person has to be. I mean, nobody's going to want to tolerate the name getting changed all the time. So, if there's a legislator you really, really like, and you're like, well, I'm in charge now, or I'm the governor now, so let's change it to my name. I don't think that's going to fly as much as changing it to a president or somebody like Harry Reid that served Nevada for as many years as he did. However, people are a little frustrated because it seems to give a reputation of this being, a pro Democrat or a pro Republican. And, as much as that was a big concern when the Harry Reid Airport was named, I don't really see that as a concern because everybody's politics is different. And I think now that you see the Republican Party fractionated, the Democratic Party fractionated, and you're seeing, what's going on, I think many people are not going to be, going, well, gosh, I live in a Democratic, state because we have an airport named after. You got Reno International Airport. I don't think they're going to be renaming Reno's airport. I think they're going to just keep it Reno. But so I don't know. It's there's going to be all these articles talking about, now there's mayhem and chaos over. We got through it in Vegas. I mean, if anybody is really, really struggling with an airport's new name, just we were fine in Vegas. We got through it. People are still unhappy, but it wasn't chaotic like everybody says it is. 1-877-DOLLY.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hi, everyone. Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis here from Legal Help Center. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up, because we have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. You can find out if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. The call is free. The consultation is free. And you can speak with a live agent right now. So if you or someone you know were injured in an accident of any kind, call now to find out if you have a case and how much you could potentially get.
Thanks, Vernon. You heard it, folks. If you've been injured, call and find out how much you qualify for. Call 800-679-0800. That's 800-679-0800. 800-679-0800. Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states. Not available in California.
We are back on the Dr. Dolly Show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So this headline is making people a little nervous, all right? 90% of U.S. adults have this syndrome, but most have never heard of it. So now 90% of us is like, oh my gosh, what the hell do we have? Oh no, what's going on? This is being reported by the Washington Post. Everybody calm down. We've actually spoken about it before. Yes, this is something that can afflict many of us, and this is why we want you on good diets and getting regular physicals. But they're talking about CKM. Not CKM. It's what's CKM? It's CKM is cardiovascular kidney metabolic syndrome. What is that? So 9 in 10 adults have it. It's only been recently named. I think that was back in 2023 by the American Heart Association, where 9 in 10 adults have this broad issue that may include obesity, may include diabetes, other metabolic conditions. And so it's kind of a net that could contain a bunch of things. And, if somebody has high blood pressure or elevated blood sugar, is maybe, let's say, pre-diabetic or pre-hypertensive or obese or moderately obese or pre-obese or has abnormal cholesterol or abnormal kidneys, that they could be a part of this CKM. So 90% of adults having something that could be affecting their heart, could be affecting their kidneys, could be affecting their metabolism. Yeah, that starts to make a little bit more sense. But I think that is frightening that 9 in 10 of us are at risk of cardiovascular disease or kidney disease or metabolic disease. And it's because we have so much obesity, so many people with high blood pressure, diabetes. So researchers have defined this syndrome as a 4-stage continuum, reflecting on how symptoms and risk factors can pile up. So stage 1 is for those of us with some extra fat tissue, where our body mass index is over 25, our waist circumference is greater than 88 centimeters in women or 102 centimeters in men. Those with dysfunctional fat tissue, those may have a larger body, or may not necessarily be big, but have glucose issues, maybe insulin resistance, pre-diabetes. BMI cannot distinguish lean body mass from fat, so it can misclassify some muscular or like I have size 10 feet. I am never going to have a size 2 dainty build. At my skinniest, I was a size 7, and I was skinny. And that was just as tiny as I like the junior clothes more, so I wore size 7, which would probably be between a 6 and an 8 adult. I mean, that was at my skinniest. I never could get smaller than that. I'm just, more bigger boned. Not that that's an actual medical diagnosis, but you have individuals that are more, they can get skinny and they can get cachectic, but there are more petite builds. Stage 2 includes people with metabolic risk factors that flow from the extra fat tissue, like having triglycerides, high blood pressure, metabolic syndrome, large waist, poor cholesterol, high blood sugar, diabetes, chronic kidney disease. At this stage, people may still be asymptomatic, but you need to be watched, and we need to minimize the damage that your triglycerides, high blood pressure, metabolic syndrome can do. Stage 3 includes those from the prior stages who have now developed pre-symptomatic heart disease like arteriosclerosis and clogging of the arteries, or heart failure, or those at high risk for chronic kidney disease, or at risk greater than 20% of a cardiac event based on the AHA's prevent calculator. So even though somebody might not notice the symptoms, doctors are already seeing the symptomatology on their exams, their angiograms, stress tests, etc. And then stage 4 are people who have had a stroke, have had heart failure, coronary artery disease, peripheral artery disease, atrial fibrillation. This stage can also occur with kidney disease, stage 4, and that can also cause future. Somebody with kidney issues could have heart issues as well. So carrying extra weight, being obese, doesn't necessarily mean all these things are going to happen to you, but it's a common denominator. And when you combine that with what's going on with your cholesterol or triglycerides, insulin resistance, high blood pressure, that's a problem. High blood sugar, high blood pressure can affect your kidneys. It's all related. And your kidneys are supposed to filter waste. Your kidneys, the reason why we tell you to eat healthy and drink plenty of water, etc., is because if your kidneys are working so hard to eliminate the crap that you've been eating, or it's getting clogged or being distracted by all the extra sugar or triglycerides or fat, it's not working properly. And if the kidneys don't get to work properly and be the most ideal and be the most efficient, then you're not going to have the cleanest body, the cleanest blood. And then that could affect end organs and your whole bodily functions. It's like, when you have a machine, you want that machine to make sure it's operating Clearly, you want to flush the lines. You want to clean things out. You don't want crud. You don't want deposits. Definitely don't want calcium deposits. These are things that can cause problems future down the line. With heart failure is a term that they've really been talking a lot about rechanging the name. But doctors have been kind of struggling with how to rename it, because when you hear heart failure, it sounds like the heart is failing. Heart failure, something is a failure, then that means it's not working. But you could have hearts that are struggling and not up to par. So if you look at failure is pass fail, that term doesn't really apply. But if you look at failure as it's failing to meet the needs that your body needs, then it is an adequate term. And so when your heart has to struggle, either because there's been arteriosclerosis and arteries clogging the left anterior descending artery, the widowmaker. Left anterior descending artery provides blood to a good portion of your left ventricle. If that gets clogged or it isn't working at its best, then your left ventricle isn't working at its best. And then it can't pump the blood well. Now, that could happen because of a heart attack, could happen because of arteriosclerosis. It could be there could be genetic issues with your heart. There could be thickening of the heart from drug use or genetics. Heart failure can be caused by a variety of things, but symptoms of heart failure is chronic cough, swelling, chronic swelling of the legs, feeling short of breath, feeling tired, not feeling at your best. A lot of people are walking around with heart failure that don't know it. How do we identify heart failure? Well, we do an echocardiogram. We can ultrasound the heart. Easy, no radiation. And we could see what's going on in terms of your valves, in terms of your pumping abilities, your ejection fraction. And oftentimes we could diagnose heart failure even without the echocardiogram, just based on your symptoms. Because if your heart isn't pumping properly, you get backflow. When you get backflow, you get swelling. We could see jugular venous distension in the neck. We see the swelling of the legs, and those are now not everybody with leg swelling has congestive heart failure. But leg swelling that's a new onset is a sign that your heart's not pumping properly. And that could also be from atrial fibrillation, an abnormal heart rate, which some people are giving themselves now with all the energy and nicotine they're taking in. So CKM is becoming a more common diagnosis. Now that it's been coined since 2023, we're starting to see a lot more doctors diagnose it. It's very broadly defined. So, like I said, 90% of Americans may have it. It doesn't mean 90% of Americans need to be on medication. And there may even be a stage 0 where people don't have it, but they're at risk of developing it because of their lifestyle choices or because of their family genetics. So understand that, you have to be on top of your health. Make sure you get your physicals. Make sure somebody's looking at your blood pressure. Any of you whose blood pressure was a little off, or sugar was a little off, or cholesterol was a little off, get that rechecked right away. And if your numbers were normal in your 20s, like my numbers were fantastic in my 20s, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. I know I like to say I am. So just because you were good 10, 15 years ago doesn't mean you're good now. So get checked out. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Hi guys, Dr. Dahlia here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdahlia.com. Check it out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme. The solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret. Powered by science.